Breaking news, vetters. It appears that a piece of a UFO crash has been tested and the findings have been released. So let's dive in and see what this is all about, y'all. If you're new to the channel and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day, y'all. And please hit that like button, vetters. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support. And of course, comment down below, what do you think about these findings? And what are the details? Let's go. All right. So very simply, AARO, which is the Pentagon's Office to Study UFOs, otherwise known as the All-Domain Anomalous Resolution Office, right? Formerly led by Sean Kirkpatrick. That will come into play in just a moment. And shout out to John Greenwald here for releasing an article about it. That's how I found out about it, through his Twitter. And he put this out. So we got a lot to go through. I've got John's article we're going to take a look a little bit at. We're going to take a look at another aspect to this that involves Sean Kirkpatrick and the lab that released the results on this piece of UFO material. And then we're also going to hear from Dr. Gary Nolan on what he has said about these pieces. And then we're actually going to take a look at some of the findings, right? It's very scientific, if you will. I'm going to save that for the end. We'll give some details. And again, links in the description. You can check everything out on your own and go dive deeper into this. And if you're probably going to have to, if you really want to know more about the results of these tests that they performed on these purported UFO materials, right? And here they are, right? These right here. And we've seen similar things like this. Other people have, I think, studied some of these samples in other ways. It's hard to tell. But where did this come from, Patrick? What UFO? What crash? What, let's go. I got the details. Okay, so here we go. This is from John's article right here. So AARO releases findings on suspected extraterrestrial alloy, right? The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office published 2 reports detailing the analysis of a magnesium alloy specimen that has been the subject of much speculation. The specimen, purportedly recovered from a crashed extraterrestrial vehicle in 1947, has been alleged to exhibit extraordinary properties, including functioning as a terahertz waveguide and generating anti-gravity capabilities, right? Some of you may know what that is. Others may not. Some of you are going to pretend like you know what that is, but you have no clue, right? Some of you might pretend you don't know, but you actually do. Who knows? However you feel about it, again, links in the description. Go dive deeper. But this is interesting. Basically, it's just saying, right, a crashed UFO. Let's be real, right? A crashed UFO. They're saying this is coming off of a crashed UFO somehow, right? And they're saying they want it tested because they're saying it has extraordinary properties. What's it made of? It's displaying something I can't explain. Let's test it. So how do they test it? AARO gets the piece. They contract Oak Ridge National Laboratory to perform the analysis of these pieces here, right? Now, what's interesting about Oak Ridge National Laboratory is that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick left AARO to go work for Oak Ridge National Labs. I'm just saying, that's interesting, right? Bam. Okay, he is working for Oak Ridge. This is Sean Kirkpatrick. So, just saying, right? You can see it right here, Oak Ridge. And that's interesting. Do have to admit that is interesting. So, look, let's go into some of the details of what exactly, they found, they looked at, all of that, right? But before we get to those results here, right, some of the papers they released, this is what Dr. Gary Nolan had to say about this back in January, when it was known that this was going to be studied and then the findings would be released, right? So this is in January of earlier this year. Gary says, well, I personally have 2 pieces of it through 2 chains of evidence. Speaking of these same pieces, right? The material is so fragile at this point, it crumbles easily. I've made burnt toast with more resilience. I don't know of any missile casing so fragile that could have survived transport and loading, never mind the acceleration of being fired. It would be dust before it left the firing tube. Both of my pieces exhibit extreme layering. So I look forward to Dr. Kirkpatrick's peer-reviewed data, as well as all the other claims he has made. Has he released any data from any of the claims? Did I miss something? Well, that's an interesting question, Taz. Have you released any data from any of the claims? We could just take that question on its own and apply it to 99% of ufology. Let's be real. So that's an interesting comment. Let's go down into the replies here, okay? Because there's some other interesting tidbits. This person asks, is there not a detailed analysis already? Various kinds of microscope besides regular bulk chemical analysis? Gary writes, I tried to get an atomic probe tomography, but it was too brittle and fell apart under the electric field gradient. So next is we embed it in a resin and try again. In the videos from Seoul, I show examples of APT done on several other samples, atomic positioning maps. Those cost me $40,000. Science ain't cheap. Let's continue. Okay. How does its fragility affect the case for it being anomalous? Durability would obviously be more interesting. Decomposition seems mundane, to be honest. Gary writes, it doesn't. It just questions the missile casing conclusion. Okay. And he doesn't really go and answer anymore. But people have some interesting questions, right? Because they're saying that the piece of... They got this from To the Stars Academy, right? These were metamaterials provided to the U.S. Army for scientific analysis through a 2019 research partnership, right? They're saying it's, right, the same piece that To the Stars was looking at. And honestly, the other Falcon Space Lab made a video about that. They were also testing pieces. This is all coming from the same place, right? People are saying Art Bell's or Art's parts, right? 1947, some crash, but now Roswell. Okay? Different. But they're saying they think it's a missile casing from the 50s. So that it's not even from the 40s. Right? But again, it's all over the place. Right? On this. But let's take a look at the results, right, of these pieces. Now, again, I'm going to put links in the description. You guys go check out all of this on your own. Look, this is the main, right, synopsis, analysis of a metallic specimen. So from Oak Ridge, right? This was provided by the Black Vault. Again, links in the description. Go check it out. Please go support John and what he's doing at Black Vault. Look, I'm just going to flow through this so you can see some pictures and kind of see what they did, right? What they're looking at, different tests, so you can see there's something to this. You can go look at it for yourself, right? They did all these analysis. Look, I don't even know what any of this means, to be honest with you. Just looking at it, and I don't know. I don't do these kind of tests. I have zero clue. I don't know what's going on here. That looks like the lines from the actual piece, right? But like I don't know what's going on here. It looks like a screen on a Star Trek display, something. Not sure what's going on here. Again, they did some tests. They did a bunch of stuff. They provided it. You can look at it. They got references. They got all this stuff here, right? You can check out. So anyway, all right. So that's that document again. Link in the description. Go check it out. This is basically their summarization, right? So this is what I'm going to go through here for everybody. All right, AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, right? Supplement to Oak Ridge National Laboratory's analysis of a metallic specimen. And remember, Sean Kirkpatrick was the head of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, retired in December, and went to work for Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So he essentially just hired himself, or at least the company he hired to do this, he then just went and worked for. Take that as you will. I don't know. It would have been nice to maybe have another office with no connection, because people are going to use that, right? They didn't think of that. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, what does that mean? Can other scientists look at the data and go, look, it doesn't matter where it came from. This is it, So maybe that's true. I don't know enough about the industry and science and how these offices work to understand that dynamic. So I don't know. Could it mean more? Possibly. Could it mean nothing? Possibly as well, right? But regardless, so this is July 2024 right now. This is breaking news, y'all. This just came out, right? So overview. In 2022, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office contracted with Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So this is saying in 2022, meaning Sean Kirkpatrick was not working for them yet. He was the head of AARO, right? The head of the AARO office here. To conduct materials testing on a magnesium alloy specimen. The specimen has been publicly alleged to be a component recovered from a crashed extraterrestrial vehicle in 1947. So a UFO, right? He's saying this came from a UFO in 1947. Now, they say component recovered, right? Was it an actual part of the craft? They claim it was an actual part of the craft, or have they talked about other things that's like stuff the craft shoots off, like that it doesn't need anymore, like some sort of exhaust, but it's metal pieces, or they drop pieces to donate to us, or I've heard that too, right? So regardless. And it purportedly exhibits extraordinary properties, such as functioning as a terahertz waveguide to generate anti-gravity capabilities. So they're saying that this functions as a waveguide and that therefore it generates anti-gravity, right? And that could be defined probably many different ways. But they're basically just saying it'll be an easy way to fly around. The atmosphere would not affect you. I think it means something like that. Regardless, they're saying this piece came from a UFO and it does some crazy shit. Right? Bottom line, that's let's be real. All right. In April 2024, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory produced a summary of findings documenting the laboratory's methodology to assess this specimen's elemental and structural characteristics, available on AARO's website. Oak Ridge National Laboratory assessed this specimen to be terrestrial in origin and that it does not meet the theoretical requirements to function as a terahertz waveguide. AARO concurs with Oak Ridge National Laboratory's assessment and provides this supplementary material to add historical context to account for its likely origin. The specimen's characteristics are consistent with MG alloy research and development projects and experimental manufacturing methods in the mid-20th century, right? So they're basically saying that, like, this thing looks like it came from different experiments they ran with the magnesium alloy back in the day. And they're like, yep, this fits that. Not that it came from a UFO. It fits more this story over here, right? That's what they're saying, right? And they're saying it doesn't have any waveguide capabilities or anti-gravity capabilities. So the materials testing, AARO contracted with Oak Ridge to conduct material measurements to determine whether this specimen is of terrestrial origin, right? And whether this specimen could serve as a THC waveguide. Oak Ridge measured the isotopic ratios of magnesium and lead in this specimen and compared the values against mass standards. A material's isotopic composition can provide valuable information about its origin and history. The specimen's I guess I don't know if I should use Mg or just say magnesium. Okay. The specimen's magnesium isotopic composition falls within the expected values for a terrestrial material that has undergone kinetic fractionation. Okay, I've never used that word. Suggesting likely terrestrial origin. Likely terrestrial origin. Let's be real here, right? I don't know if this is conclusive? They just admitted it's not. Its lead isotopic ratio is consistent with ratios found in terrestrial lead, further supporting this conclusion, right? Oak Ridge found this isotopic composition of this material to be unremarkable. That's interesting. The specimen's magnesium and lead ratios fall within the standard values for manufactured materials, indicating that it is not unique or unusual material. Elemental and structural analysis can help determine whether a structure has the characteristics of a waveguide. A waveguide is a structure that bounds and directs the propagation of waves. Waveguides are instrumental to many technologies. Oak Ridge measured the specimen's top layers, elemental composition, and crystal structure and found bismuth, collocated? I don't think I've used that word before either. Collocated with nearly equal parts lead. High-resolution elemental mapping shows repeating layers of bismuth and lead banding throughout the specimen, and zinc concentration varying from 1 to 4 WT%. I don't know what that means. Structural analysis shows columnar, magnesium grains perpendicular to the bismuth and lead banding. According to Podolsky, bismuth can theoretically function as a waveguide when it exists as a single crystalline layer between surfaces with sufficient dielectric constants. I don't know what any of that means. As a single crystalline layer, bismuth displays anisotropic and properties cause electromagnetic waves to propagate non-uniformly across different axes. Podolsky assert that a monocrystalline layer of bismuth has sufficient anisotropy, to guide THZ frequency waves. This is like brutal for me reading this. Okay, so basically they're saying it cannot function as a waveguide. It is possible for those elements to come together and do that, but not in this case. They're saying in this case, that's not right what it is. So they're saying, yes, you can build a house with bricks. They're saying that's not what's going on over here. This is not a house with bricks, right? So, look, Oak Ridge and AARO could not determine whether the specimen was a fragment of a larger object. That is interesting. That's an important, But again, people are going to trust this or not. I don't know, right? However, this specimen's delamination, oxidation, and structural characteristics are consistent with exposure to environmental and mechanical stresses over time. In its current form, the specimen probably does not represent its original configuration, condition, or application. Despite these complicating factors, AARO draws two distinct conclusions from Oak Ridge National Lab's findings, right? First, the specimen's physical properties are consistent with the material of terrestrial origin, right? Materials exhibit a predictable isotopic signature when formed in and exposed to terrestrial conditions. This specimen's isotopic signature is consistent with terrestrial signatures and does not exhibit expected interstellar signatures, right? So basically what they're saying is this looks like this came from Earth. There are other examples of this, right? And we see nothing that would lead us to believe that this is interstellar in any way, that has traveled through interstellar space in no way, right? This piece. And second, the specimen's structural and elemental properties are inconsistent with the anisotropic and properties required to theoretically function as a waveguide. Again, so they're saying There's just no way this is can act as a waveguide and therefore have these anti-gravitic properties, right? Historical context and likely origin. All right, this is the last part I'm going to read here. Starting in 1950 and peaking during World War II, there was widespread domestic research on magnesium alloys for airframes, engines, weapons, and delivery systems. At the time, researchers did not fully understand magnesium corrosion and other failure mechanisms. Many projects studied magnesium, zinc alloys with 1 to 4 WT%. I don't know what that means. Zinc in magnesium. Other projects studied the impact of lead and bismuth additives on magnesium alloys for corrosion resistance. This research found that lead and bismuth would concentrate at the surface due to lower surface tension, consistent with the banding seen in the specimen. That's interesting. The specimen's grain structure, zinc concentration, and banding of bismuth and lead are also consistent with out-of-equilibrium processes, such as vapor deposition in a vacuum chamber that may have contained impurities. Before 1970, vapor deposition manufacturing techniques were not fully mature, and achieving pristine thin films remained challenging. Right? So they're basically saying they would, even in a vacuum of trying to piece these, elements together, there would still be some impurities. They couldn't perfect it, right? And that's why this piece contains some other things that may be, whatever. But that's just part of the process. And they're saying this checks with the history of this, right? And they put a lot of references here. You can go check it for yourself. They're referencing other things. They tell you the references where you can go dig deeper, right? Like, where are they getting this information from? Well, they're telling you, right? Research, development, testing, and evaluation is an iterative process of trial and error. This process subjects test objects to conditions designed to evaluate material limits and identify modes of failure. Historically, the scientific community has not extensively documented failed experiments. That's interesting. That is interesting, right? Many experimental magnesium alloys failed for reasons not well understood at the time of testing. Example, stress corrosion, cracking. Unsurprisingly, records of failed magnesium alloy designs are scant. Neither AARO nor Oak Ridge National Labs could verify the specimen's historical origin. Unverifiable, conflicting personal accounts complicate its undocumented chain of custody. Regardless of the specimen's attributability, to a specific research project, it is consistent with well-documented magnesium alloy research projects during the mid-20th century and is otherwise unremarkable. So, but look, they are admitting we can't trace its origins, and there is no documented chain for this. And that is interesting, right? So the people that provided the specimen can't provide a chain of custody to it, right? Where it came from and how they got it. Well, clearly came from a UFO. So what paper trail would they be? It's not like the aliens left a document to go along with the UFO piece, right? Like a note for the teacher, if that was the case, right? And if it wasn't, the conclusion that AARO's coming to of it just being part of, manufacturing process and probably an error of a testing process, right? Just think of it like you're cooking food and parts of it, some of it burns, whatever. You're making burgers, a couple burn, you throw them away, right? You don't save them and study them. You eat the ones that are good and you pass those off to the plate and that's what goes on, right? The other ones go in the trash. So it sounds like that's what this is, and they wouldn't document that, which is interesting. But so they're saying they can't trace its origin either, right? So this test has conclusions, but it's also left a little inconclusive. So it's going to be for everyone to decide on their own, right? We want scientific analysis of these things, and then we're not going to believe the scientific analysis unless it tells us exactly what we want to hear? I don't know. Right? Shouldn't we pick a lab, all agree this is cool, and then whatever their analysis? Because if the idea is, well, we're just not going to accept analysis because it doesn't fit what we want to hear, we lose. No matter what you believe. If you're a skeptic, believer, in between, right? If that's the sandbox we lay, we're screwed. Right? So I don't know. This is going to be very interesting. I can already read the comments. I get it. People don't trust AARO. AARO didn't really do a good job. Now, granted, they didn't do this. They passed it off to Oak Ridge. Now you got to just start determining, is Oak Ridge a reputable place, right? What would Gary Nolan say about Oak Ridge National Labs? Has he used Oak Ridge National Labs before, right? And then showed those results. Are those results okay? I don't know. And maybe if you're a scientist, you'd want to know how some of these tests are done and yada, 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 yada. Right? But at the end of the day, I don't know. And let's be real. You can still be a believer, believe in all this, and be like, yeah, this is bullshit. Get that out of the way. Let's go on to something else, right? That's okay, too. Right? Everything can't be everything. And everything can't be nothing. Right? It's okay. In fact, I mean, if I'm being real, if you're truly a believer, you'd probably be happy that this is proven wrong. I mean, clearly you'd want the extraterrestrial conclusion, right? But the fact that it's kind of like, oh, well, one less thing to worry about. Because there's a bazillion things in this community floating around. It's hard to tell what's real, what's not, what should we focus on, what should our energy be. All right, we put time and effort into this piece. Let's move on from it. Now the question becomes, all the pieces that are floating around the UFO community that people are studying, these are all the same pieces. Everyone's got the same piece. So what does that mean? Are we wasting our time looking at these same pieces? I don't know. But I get the idea. If you got a piece of this, you'd be like, well, I'm going to test it on my own. No problem. Should be repeatable. Somebody should be able to then take these other pieces, do the same test, and see if you get the same results. So, right? I mean, that should clearly be available. So, again, links in the description. Go check it out. It's up for you to decide. Everything's there, and y'all can decide. All right? So, all right, guys. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace!